All right, it's a beautiful time on television, and many thanks for joining us on our program on TV, African Discourse. My name is Evan Sunohoge. It's been quite some time on this show. It's often said that all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy, and of course, all play and no work makes Jack a mere boy. So I don't want to be a dull boy, and also I don't want to be a mere boy. So I had to go on my vacation. And of course, I have to return back to work. So I want to say a very big thank you to, most especially, the management of independent television and radio for finding it, fit to ensure that the staff always go on their annual vacation. And also, too, I say a very big thank you to my colleague, Wisino Marshall, that had brief why the program lasted. My name is Evan Sunokoge. Well, it's not gainsaying anymore that the 2023 presidential election in Nigeria has come and gone. And sometime about let's say about 1 or 2 months ago now, I came here and I did a show on elections that we're going to be expecting in the year 2023 in Africa. And of course, we mentioned countries like Nigeria. We also mentioned countries like Sierra Leone, Zimbabwe, Liberia, and also Gabon. The Democratic Republic of Congo was also mentioned in that program. And I told you that Nigeria's election is going to be the very first election for the year 2023 that Africa as a continent is going to be witnessing. And of course, you know that when we say Nigeria, most countries on the African continent always want to look up into what happened in Nigeria, politically, economically, and otherwise. So we've had our presidential election, and of course, a president-elect has been named, and sometime in May this year is going to be sworn in as the next president in this country. All right, so to look at elections in Africa in 2023 and also see how we can make major pullouts from what we just had in Nigeria on the show today. We are so privileged to have Dr. Peter Owaibi, popularly known as Peter the Rock, a legal luminary, and of course, a political juggernaut, a political enthusiast, one guy that knows his onions when it comes to political issues in the country. Dr. Peter Owaibi, you're welcome to the program African Discourse.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
All right,
I have a little cold, so.
Okay, yeah, you're a bit under the weather.
Yes.
All right, so we just ensure that we do the needful today so that we can really have our way on the show today. All right, so just like what we said, that Africa, a continent that a lot of persons look up to, and also Nigeria, one country on the African continent that people look up to. We've had our presidential election, and I think we're going to be having in June another election. Sierra Leone is going to be having its election, whereby Julius Maada Bio is expected to seek a second term. Now, let us look at other countries remaining on the African continent. Sierra Leone, Zimbabwe, Liberia, and of course Gabon, the Democratic Republic of Congo. Let us see these countries and see what happened in Africa. They just completed presidential election in Nigeria. What do you think are the major pullouts that perhaps other countries on the African continent now are going to be learning as it relates to Nigeria's election? Dr. Owaibi.
Yes, thank you very much for that elaborate introduction. When we're looking at African politics, well, you have to first of all look at it from your home base, which is Nigeria. You know, we started politics and electionary process in Nigeria in 1959. Shortly before independence, we came to our electionary processes. And since then, the elections have been marred with a lot of irregularities, a lot of electionary malpractices, and which has occasioned, in many instances, violence. And quite recently, we had our own election in Nigeria, which was this month, February. Mm. And of course, March now we are going to be having governorship elections. But we are thinking that to be able to forestall the inconsistency of electionary process in Nigeria and to a larger extent Africa, we must try as much as possible the principal organizing officers, for instance in Nigeria, which is the national, which is the INEC, must be seen to be credible and fair, and there must be a kind of an unbiased umpire. They must not be bribe takers, and there may not be bad judgment of results. You have seen that, for instance, now we must be able to avoid and avert a lot of incidences that are catastrophic. You know, incidences that brings about the loss of lives. You will realize that Jonathan said several times before he left office that no blood is worth an electionary victory. And so he gladly threw in his towel even before the results were finally announced. You will also remember that in 2007, 2008, this Kenyan election claimed over 1,700 lives died. And over 1 million people were displaced from their home. That death and that casualty was as a result of electionary rigging. You know, you rig the sitting president or the incumbency will always find a way to perpetuate themselves in power. A very flag that teaches kind of, you know, manners. The leaders are extremely wicked and not deserving of the persons who put them there in power. So if you take yourself back to the reference of that Kenya disaster, where you have over 1,700, 1,500 people dying based on protestation by the public, having been mowed down by the army and the authority, you will realize that Africa, since 2007, we should come to a change. We should grow with the rest of the world into a more peaceful and credibility and fair election. No, but in the case of Nigeria, we agreed to mar and stop these electionary uncertainties. We therefore gave INEC a lot of strength, financial strength, manpower strength, to be able to revitalize, readdress, and come up with a better solution to devoid the system of electionary rigging, vote buying, bribery. And INEC, with all the billions that were given to them, came up with what they call beavers. Beavers, they assured us, was a system by which there will be a biometric capture. That is, whoever is going to vote will be validated by its fingerprints, even by its biometric eyelashes, so that no person else can come into using other people's cards to vote. Everybody applauded INEC when they introduced it, and even the electionary process 2022, amended, said also that beavers will be used, and that in a case where a voter's credibility or credentials is not properly captured by the beavers machine, they will introduce another beavers machine in that same unit on that same day. And if at that point also that the newly introduced machine is not also it's not workable, is obsolete, or then that election in that unit will be cancelled.
Okay, let me pause you because we know that...
we discovered that even though those beavers were not used,
the
elections were not cancelled.
Yeah, it's very, very natural to want to make reactions and reservations against how the elections were done in Nigeria. We are not INEC, and of course we are also not any of the political parties. INEC has given us the candidates that won as the president-elect in the country. So if there are reactions, the cases will eventually go to court, so we cannot preempt the public here And of course, we cannot also judge. Because the way we are trying to explain it, Dr. YB, now, I leave it to the fact that you're also trying to express your own reservation, which is personal to you. Now, let us look at something that we also need to talk about. Because apart from the fact that it's only natural to want to express reservations against how the elections, went in Nigeria, can't we see some bright aspects, areas that INEC did well in the election? Take, for example, INEC promised us that come on the 25th day of February 2023, we're going to have the elections, and of course it came. Because other countries, I think for the first time in about 2 elections that we've had now, we've had a situation whereby election is set to be held on a particular day, and of course they shifted. But this time, we didn't have that situation. So other countries in Africa, don't you think that they may want to applaud us for this, that, oh, Nigeria actually fixed a date for its presidential election, and of course they actually had that day. Don't you think so?
Well, that is very parochial, unfounded, and hopelessly not credible. That you're able to hold election on a particular day, which married into a fraudulent election, I don't see why we should clap for you for that. If you hold election, even in a date that is delayed, and then it becomes credible, and equity-wise is fair, then we can applaud you that you were able to hold on a date and mastered your fraudulent acts. There's nothing to be applauded about. Look at the case of, you talked about some African countries now. Look at 2010, if I'm not mistaken. There was an election in Côte d'Ivoire, Abidjan, and Babo was the sitting president at that time. They went into an electionary process. Quata, which was the opposition leader, won by 54% of the voting populace, which is first past the post, by way of popularistic election counts. Quata won it, but Babo, the president, brought in his constitutional council to revisit the result of that election, turned it around, and they came up and made him win the election with 51%, ousting the credible results of Qatar. And the people went to streets. You remember, even in that same incident, that same 2010, United Nations, so concerned about vitiating the proper elections, to come into a credible electionary process, went into a kind of, association and yes, whatever, with the INEC officials of that country to reenact the election process and send people back to polling units. And when people went back to polling units, Qatar won again with 51%. And what's his name? Babu refused to go until the army came and took him off the seats. And that is a trend in Africa. They are very flagitious. They are very wicked. They don't care about non-plucity. As a matter of fact, they bet themselves in the pride of being able to rig and rig well. Some time ago, I was listening to the television. One of these APC stalwarts said, well, if you're not ready to take part in the rigging of election, then you cannot be a politician. And I said, that is sad, sadistic, and almost an evil utterance.
So, but we can also say that other political party members also make their utterances too. So it's only not for the APC, don't you think so?
That is extremely correct. But the APC, in the past, I've always said, when you commit a sin or when you're a fraudulent person, you come into APC, you'll be forgiven.
Anyway, we're not here to judge
we're not here to
APC.
say that, but I'm saying that, what brought about this angle of discussion was that you said we should applaud INEC.
We should look at areas that INEC did well. The way people are saying it out there, that for the first time in some time now, INEC promised us a date. And
I don't know why you're looking at a date. A date is not homogeneous. A date is very narrow. Look at the 1993 elections. which was presided over by Maradona, what's his name, Babangida. It was an option A
for election.
Option A for elections, where you have to come in, line up as against the candidate you so wish to vote for. Open ballot system, let me put it that way. But, you know, very credible. It will avoid or it will eliminate the idea of vote buying. Because I'm going to vote for you, I'm on queue to vote for a particular person. This secret ballot system, it really does not work in Africa here.
Okay. Now, in June, Sierra Leone is going to be going to the polls, whereby they are going to be having their presidential and, of course, the parliamentary elections, whereby President Julius Maada Bio is expected to seek a second term. And his Sierra Leone People's Party will be hoping to retain its majority in the National Assembly, which has been threatened by rising discontent over the high cost of living. Now, what we're trying to say here is that we have an incumbent, power in Sierra Leone. And the feelers we get from Sierra Leone is that there's high cost of living. The economy is, is going down by the day, and majority of Sierra Leoneans are not contented with the authority there. Somehow, one is almost tempted to say that it was almost the same situation, say like in Nigeria. We had reactions over economic issues and all that. And still, we still had the party in power, winning the election. So what do you think is in Africa's elections in Africa, that's whereby you still have people complaining? Then, of course, you still have incumbent power still winning elections. Is it that the people don't vote aright, or something goes wrong somewhere?
It's nothing like voting wrong or something going wrong or people are not voting right. It's all about falsification, fraudulence, thieving, abuse of power and office. As I said earlier on, how can we have spent so much money for INEC, came up with beavers and all of those things, and in all of the expectations, you dashed it because you said the beavers that you have spent years and money to bring into the system did not work, failed. And nobody's being prosecuted for that. Nobody's been indicted, no talk of incarceration. What kind of a nation can that lead us to?
Let us try to leave Nigeria out of this now. Let's stretch it further to other countries in Africa.
Well, you talked about Sierra Leone. Sierra Leone, they have an incumbency. It's a difficulty in Africa. The only person in Africa that has demonstrated magnanimity in terms of relinquishing of power, by a prudent process, has been Nelson Mandela. He was there for 4 years. After that, he said, well, okay, I think I am weak now. I may have to relinquish office to a stronger person, a more credible person, a more acceptable person. And he left. Mandela could have stayed in office forever. But you see, the African leader finds it difficult to dissociate himself from power, because power in Africa has become too lucrative. And power in Africa has become too excessive, compounded in one office of the president. And therefore, the power becomes used by the president in an excessive manner. And the power will not corrupt the president's personality and corrupt his office and corrupt his family. That the last time we are witnessing some members of the family saying they want to be billionaires just because that their fathers should be president. Now, what kind of African nation are we living in? The United Nations, as I told you, in the case of Ouattara, came in and tried to establish a credible election. In that establishment, the African leaders still tried as much possible to derail all that credibility and still enforce themselves on the people. And so we keep on saying we are sovereignty, we are sovereignty, we are sovereignty. The sovereignty of trying to fetter the people to slavery. The shackles of the chains of slavery is so much amongst Africans that they hardly can breathe in the discomfort of the struggling of their leaders.
Okay. Now, the issue of vote buying has been a major problem in elections in Africa. Not only a problem in Nigeria, perhaps in other countries on the continent of Africa during elections. Now, the way the Nigerian authority, perhaps you may want to say now, went over the issue of votes buying, perhaps for the first time in a very long while, whereby the elections did not really have issues with vote buying this time. I mean, we didn't really hear about how people bought vote, how people sold their votes and all that. We saw all that happen with the cash crunch issue, a policy that the federal government introduced and all that. Now, would you want to suggest here, Dr. Waibi, that perhaps these other countries that are going to be having their elections this year, 2023, in Africa, should also try to employ the kind of method that the federal government used this time?
Yes, you know, there's what they call the Electoral Act 2022 as amended.
2023?
No.
22, yeah.
2022
yeah,
as amended.
As amended, yeah.
Yes. You know, and the idea of these amendments and, you know, repeal and amendment is to continue to fine-tune the process of the system. But you see, here in Nigeria, we take it as a mere paperwork and a waste of time in terms of implementation. There are guidelines that create electioneering offenses. Vote buying is one of them. You know, if you are a vote buyer and you now monetize the conscience of the people to dance towards belly politics, that is, give me some money, I vote for you, it's a criminal offense.
Yeah,
because
exactly,
then,
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, because
so
then you are diverting the democratic system of the people.
Yeah,
which
Dr.
means
Waibi,
you have a right to your choice.
Yeah, I
without
think
any undue influence, again, undue influence on another crime. You know, but you see us commit electionary offenses, and nobody is brought to book.
Yeah, Dr. Waibi,
In this 2023,
yeah,
there was a lot of electionary buying. We saw
in this just completed
chairs,
election,
we saw in the social media, what's his name, Wike of River State, threatening that he's going to kill some people.
No, let us not mention things that we cannot. Dr. Waibi, it is only what we can substantiate here.
They perpetuate a lot of wrongdoings. And when you are trying to speak about it, they say, shh, don't talk, don't talk.
No, if you have facts, right here, do you have the fact to prove that now? Because what you are claiming now, that's
I'm not claiming it.
What you are saying went around the social media. They same Wike can come up tomorrow that, look, I did not put that.
They let him come in and say that. I will say what I can say. He can come in and say whatever he wants to say. We cannot in Nigeria continue to be mashed. We cannot continue to match our tongues and frighten us into submissiveness and frighten us into subdued life.
So are you saying that votes were bought in this election?
Yes. As a matter of fact, okay, what were, you know, it was speculative about the president, Buhari, that there was this cash, you know, restriction, you know, and then mop up of excessive liquidity of cash in the system because he did not want people to have money to be able to buy elections. But we saw somebody like, what's his name, Asiwaju Tinubu on social media, bringing out new notes.
There you go again.
They had new notes.
We cannot also, you know,
okay, wait. Let me put it away. I see. I can understand.
You know, not just. You know, there are social media bloggers.
Okay. Did you not see in the social media where INEC seized 30 million naira from somebody who claimed that it was given to him by an
Dr. Waibi, all those are social media content.
Is INEC,
they are not conventional.
Social media.
Such things that we cannot, you know, really confirm. We don't talk about them on the conventional media.
Let's move
this
forward.
Is the conventional media that you and I see. The social media is just something that somebody caricatured and put there. You know, so let's leave it there. Anyway, what we are really saying here is that the way Nigeria did it this time, because on the majority, if you go around downtown, people will tell you that we did not really have issues with vote selling, vote buying, and all that.
That is in Edo State, maybe.
The way it went all through we monitored the elections too, and we didn't really hear that so far.
No, I also monitored the election. You know, don't forget I came with some these international election observers. I was part of them.
That solved vote being bought and so.
Yes. No, let me tell you something. You saw a girl was being trashed on the social media, a youth couple. was being trashed. We saw another youth couple that said, oh, she was giving some money, $100. You know, we saw all these things. In any case, as you rightly said, let's not preempt any idea or any issue, because you know a lot of these political parties, you know, who felt their ambitions changed by way of reading and collecting evidence to go to court.
Anyway,
you know?
the program is still African Discourse on independent television, and we are looking at elections in the year 2023, also trying to bring the just completed election in Nigeria into retrospect and see how other nations on the continent of Africa can also make one or two pullouts from the election that we just had. So we'll quickly take a short pause now, and when we come back, we are going to see other countries. We have Zimbabwe, Liberia, Gabon, and the Democratic Republic of Congo. All these countries are going to be having their elections in this year, 2023. Please stay tuned. All right, welcome back. The program still African Discourse on independent television, and we are looking at elections in Africa for the year 2023. We still have Dr. Peter Waibi here, popularly known as Peter the Rock, a politician and of course a public affairs analyst. Now, we've talked about Sierra Leone. Zimbabwe, it's going to be having its election too this year, where we have President Emerson Mnangagwa, that's his name now, and he's going to be hoping to overcome a new challenge by opposition leader Nelson Chamisa, whose Citizens Coalition for Change outfit has sought to galvanize the opposition and to correct the mistakes of 2018. And we're also told that in power since Zimbabwe's independence, the ZANU-PF party will be hoping to extend its rule over the Southern African country. So that is one thing that we're also going to compare with what just happened in Nigeria. The APC is said to have won the election. As a matter of fact, it is told that the APC had, except some few states in the south here, that the APC did not really have its spread. So let's look at this situation whereby a major political party, by the results of the election, major political party do have a major spread, as the results says. So what do you think, what are the major pullouts that we get from this, despite the fact that that party is in power? And of course, prior to the election, you hear reactions that this party is not doing what the people needs. And after the election, such a party is still able to spread across, the geopolitical zone of this country, of this zones in the country. What are the major pullouts?
When you say geopolitical zones, you bring into picture, into focus, ethnocentric politics. You bring into focus bigotry politics. You bring into focus favoritic politics. Clownishness in Nigeria or in Africa is a big problem. We are not looking at meritoriousness, we are not looking at credibilities. We are not dealing with the best intellectualities, we are not dealing with the best minds in terms of selflessness. When we are dealing with ethnocentrism, we are dealing with that, oh, the person is from my clan. If you see the last election in Nigeria, clanishly, everybody from his own area won his own election. But there was no, across the map, there was no political spread across the nation in terms of the business of defilement of political sentiments or ethnicity sentiments. It happened only in Lagos. And in any case, the crowd, the aspiration of the people, we are bestioned and we are rested on the youth of the nation, who incidentally are 65% of the voting of the electorate. And so if you look at 20 million voters who are all youth, whoever they support immediately clinches the office of the president in terms of the presidential elections. So when you come up with results where they were magnanimous, they were numerous in the voting system, or in persons that cast their vote, and you try to say yes or no, it will lead to election violence. You know, it will lead to election protestation. And so if we continue to perpetuate this type of style in Africa, we shall continue to experience, you know, upheavalness, youth restiveness will continue to occur, and we are not able to stabilize ourselves and be able to bring about the cementation of unity amongst all the ethnic groups. Because even in the time of Buhari, he said that, oh, the people that gave him 5%, he ain't going to do nothing much for them. You know, those things are not presidential. You know, because if you are a national president, you are looking at thinking of everybody. You know, look at what happened in Uganda. Look at what happened in Rwanda. You know, when they had this ethnicity cleansing. Uganda in 2 years ago, 2021, they had the election in Uganda. And the manipulation, the maneuvering of the sitting president at that time brought about so much destruction of the nation when the youth challenged the autocracy, the mastery of the military involvement. The government, government will always use the military because they are in control of the military and the police, paramilitaries and military, and brought the military out to quell the protection of these young people who were aching and itching for a change. And of course, the clash brought a lot of casualties, global condemnation and a point of isolation, where some of these countries were even isolated and debarred from United EU, African Union, and even ECOWAS, like in the case of, Ouattara. So this is what we are already experiencing in Africa. So the question will be, how do we now reconcile this greed for power? How do we now reconcile an egalitarian system of government and an egalitarian system of electioneering process? If we cannot make our elections credible, why the problem? Why the waste of time? Why the enormous involvement of financial implications, where at the end of the day your vote will not count? What is the deceit for? You deceive us, the election will not count. You deceive us, you use all of our money. You know how many polling units we had in Nigeria last time? 177,000 polling units. And these things were manned by people who were paid. And these things were manned by agents of political parties who again took their time and who again they had the structural payments, whether financially or otherwise. Now, why make us go through all of that? And then at the end of the day, you just cook up figures and just read results, and everybody should just go back home and be dancing hallelujah and thanking you for having done a credible election. You did not change the date. It should not be like that.
Anyway, now that you are talking about writing results and all that, we had various international observers coming from the United States of America, from the European Union to monitor this election. Now, from your own observation, what do you think is the major pullouts? What is the message that they took home?
Now, the message was this. In Australia, they had a headline that says, Nigeria elects a drug baron as their president. In Poland, they had a headline news there in the national newspaper that Nigeria have elected somebody who was coming to loot.
But don't you also think that all these headlines were just
and even in Canada,
yeah.
And even in Canada said in one of the newspapers.
Don't you think the headlines were personal opinion?
No, but you yourself, you are a journalist. So if you write tomorrow what you observe, you have just asked me the question that what do we take home in terms of the international observers? I'm telling you what they took back to their country and they wrote it. You are not telling me it's personal, but it's what they observed. Even Thabo Mbeki, the ex-president of South Africa, noted that these elections were marred with flaws. Is it only in Nigeria that we cannot agree that this is all a hoax, a hip hugger, very pedestrian? People have no credibility. People have no principalities in Nigeria. You are a big man. You are just emptiness. You are just an absolute fraud. You want to thief. You want to loot the economy dry. We should be thinking of how to make these things unattractive.
Yeah, but Dr. Wabi, we understand that the Center for African Democracy, one of the observers that monitor the election, I judge the elections to have been peaceful and transparent and all that. So I think that sometimes when we share this opinion, we are looking at it from our own perspective. Our own perspective may be different from other person's perspective. Don't you think so?
Yes, our own perspective is a collective perspective.
Just the way other people's perspective are also collective too.
It's a collective perspective, because if you look at the excuses, the elections were met with so many excuses. Oh, sorry, we couldn't transmit by BVAT. Oh, sorry, we brought electionary materials very late. Oh, sorry, we could not start the voting on time. This a man with a lot of flaws. And it was geared, it was an intentionality to be able to create an election that was going to be rigged by that same authority that was brought about or that was inaugurated to oversee a credible election. That same authority, that same INEC. We are seeing some states where they had exactly the same figure of voters with another state. Even in our state, they had another state that had exactly the same numbers of voters with us. And, those things are not credible. We should let it be credible.
We're looking at the people that actually came out to vote that day.
Buhari has said he wants a legacy. Buhari said he wants a legacy because he himself is fed up of an international disrepute about Nigerians. He's fed up. Why can't we just get it right? How much money do you want in your life to rig the election? How much money? And meanwhile, your physical composition, your outright pathological composition, is flawed and rickety. But you need all the money to do what? You're not even young. What are you going to spend the money for? You cannot eat, you cannot sleep, you cannot dance, you cannot even answer a telephone.
Dr. Waibi,
so what do you need the money for then?
Yeah, we are not personal physicians to candidates. So candidates that are cleared have the right to run for elections.
You're very correct, but nobody clears any candidate here by way of medical examinations. We don't come into medical reports of our candidates. Our President Buhari went to London many, many times. He didn't even tell us what was the ailment. He didn't tell us what was the reason for his traveling overseas. So there's no medical examination clearance for our presidential candidates, no. Even their basic financial strength and earnings, it's not even cleared. You are supposed to declare it. All those are part of, why do we just come up with policies that are not actionable in Nigeria?
Okay, what would you want to suggest here now? Because that seems to be a major problem. The problem of health disposition, if you like now, the mental disposition of candidates that run for elections in Africa. Would you want to suggest here, Dr. Waibi, that perhaps countries in Africa should bring up a special legislation that you must be seen to be fiscally fit? If possibly, your personal physician should show it to the whole world that, look, this is the medical certificate of this person before candidates run for elections in Africa.
Exactly. In the case of America last time when Donald Trump was running, he came out with his medical certificate.
No, but even at that, we also had reactions that Donald Trump was too old.
Yeah, no, not necessarily. No,
Joe Biden now that he was...
It's not the age.
Yeah.
Maybe I ran into your trap. But... No, but we saw a situation whereby he came up with a medical report of his health. You see, we are joking with a nation of 200 million sound-minded, intellectually, educated persons in Nigeria. In that sphere, you must come up with the best, or near the best. I've just told you. Nigeria is big, populous, giant of Africa. A lot of African pocket nations are looking up to Nigeria. And then you come up with one of the most fragile persons intellectually. As a matter of fact, some of the reasons, in any case, one of the functions, or eligibility to be a president in Nigeria includes sound mental health. Good education, sound physical health. You must be healthy. Nobody's going to be pushing a wheelchair or walking stick man up and down to take part in, international conferencing. No, you must have to be a Nigerian. And to be a Nigerian, you should be healthy, strong, and disposable. You know, at any time to any of our problems. Disposable to at any time to any of our problems. You cannot, at any time you are called to service, you are not healthy, you are not in Nigeria. You know, you are somewhere else taking treatment. We don't need it when we can avoid it.
Okay. Liberia, which happens to be one of the oldest democracies on the continent of Africa now, is going to be having its presidential election sometime in October this year. We'll have George Weah as the incumbent president there. Now, George Weah had issues with his citizen recently, where he was said that he went for the World Cup in Qatar and all that. So that seems to be one major issue that is going to be battling with in the elections. But let's leave that now. Now, Dr. YB, let's come back to Nigeria. Now, do you see Liberia? Is there anything that Liberia as a country, we're almost next door neighbors here now. Is there anything that you think they want to take from us as it relates to the just completed election?
Or what we want to take from them? Because your way now, he just got married again a few months ago.
Yeah,
he was enjoying himself, you know, amassing his wives, you know, when he should be busy, you know, in policy.
But he's going to be running in the election, so
he will be. Yes, yeah. He will be. For a man that's so romantically attached, you know, as a president, you have a wife before you want to marry another one. You know, no, I mean that will show a lot of distractions. You know.
No, that's a bit personalistic now. But
no, personalistic. Is it not a person that makes the president? Or is it you feel it?
Let's leave that now, Dr. White.
Okay,
now, is there anything that you think they will learn from us?
Yes, what they will learn from us is, or what they will unlearn from us is that, you know, from our mistakes, they will have a huge correction. When you see the outcry in Nigeria, that the whole election was occasioned by rigging and electionary malpractices. So they will try to distance themselves from that because they know that that is a negative kind of publicity, which as an embryonic state in Africa, we don't want to go through that. You know, you need a more positive response from the rest of the world of how prudent and how clear, you know, and you know, that you are, you know, in these elections, you know. You should be open, fair, and transparent, you know, when you do things with your nationals or with your citizens. In Nigeria, we are too clouded. The presidency or the hegemony of leadership in Nigeria has so much devastated the aspiration of our citizens that we see all of us crying, suffering. You want to buy petrol, you carry jerry can and beat yourselves in the petrol queue. You want to collect money from the bank, you will beat yourselves. You will spit at each other. Some of us will collapse on the street just because we want to take money that belongs to you. You want to do BVN, you want to do NIN, you know, all these negative concomitants. You know, it's so involved, it's so part of Nigerians. Why? Africans, why? You come in from the airport, everybody is sweating under the heat. In spite of that, the immigration, the custom will be worrying you, come down, why are you coming, where did you not come from, who did you bring? You know, we should change all the narratives. It's so sad. And we now have a system whereby we are allowed, you know, for political canvassing. Come and tell us what you can do for us so that we can be tuned, you know, towards voting for you. Then again, we bastardize it. We saw a very credible candidate coming to tell us how you can improve our lives, electricity, you know, technology, infrastructural development. We don't want that. But we find those who are not able to take part even in a debate to tell the people what they can do for the people. You find us geared towards such a person who hardly opens his mouth to talk, and whenever he talks, he blabs, incoherent. A man that most people think that he speaks in tongue. I mean, it's not the right time we shall continue to farm, you know, the ego of miscreants, you know, questionable characters and crooks.
Yeah, the African Union has actually suggested that if Nigeria is to have a credible election, then of course the use of the beavers, that's the bimodal verification system now, should ensure that it should be put into use thoroughly. Now, you and I saw all those arguments before that act, that constitution. The Electoral Amendment Act was eventually put into passage, into accent now by the House, the Federal Assembly, and of course eventually by the President. And the very first test that the Beavers had now, the very first major test it had was the presidential election, and reactions are still trailing. Counter reactions and reactions are still trailing how effective that Beavers was. Now, the African Union now has suggested that this time, we're not done with our elections now. On Saturday, we still have the governorship election in some states, and of course the House of Assembly elections in some state, in all the states now. Now, let's go back to this election we're going to be having on Saturday. The African Union, AU, has, in strong terms, actually is saying that the beavers should be looked into. What are your opinions on this now?
You know, it's so difficult to deal with the prodigal son. At the point when the prodigal son needs or has his own wealth, he goes to squander it. Because one, he did not work for it. Two, he has no value for it. My mother used to say, wash a pig, comb a pig remains a pig. In Nigeria here, according to Fela, Anima put on Agbada. Well, that will not change. The youth came to change it. These same people we are aware of brought out arms and killed the youth during NSAS. These same people now are the people that are going to now say they are going to be our leaders. I mean, that is not acceptable. Let's understand that we need a change, a genuine change for the better, not a change for the worst. We saw the sufferings of Nigeria in the last 8 years. It's unbearable. It's almost a hypnotical fairness, worse than hell. And people were hoping that they vote, not revolutionary or by way of force, they were hoping that by peaceful enactment of their votes, the simple cast of their vote will change a situation better for them. After looking at all the presidential aspirants, they chose this or that and that they think can meet up with the aspirational change.
Yeah, Dr. Waibi, your opinion on the beavers? The African
the beavers,
Union,
the
is
beavers
holding in
is a
strong
beautiful
terms.
thing. Yes, the beavers is such a wonderful innovation. But you see, however wonderful it is, it was never implemented. They find a way to sidetrack the rubbish beavers, throw the rubbish beavers, remove the rubbish beavers from here. This is Nigeria. We don't come into credibility. If we use these beavers now, the right people will win. But better throw this thing for corner first. What do you say, my brother? I beg, count this thing. Count 20, count 100. I mean, our beavers go going to tell us what to do in Nigeria here.
Anyway, we want to say a very big thank you to you, Dr. Peter Waibi. Thank you so much. A handshake now for finding time to come on the show today, African Discourse. Now,
sorry about that. I have a lot of cold.
Yeah, so we've seen that elections are on in Africa. Gabon, Democratic Republic of Congo, Zimbabwe, Liberia, Sierra Leone, and of course some other countries are going to be having their elections also in this year, 2023. Nigeria has had its presidential and of course the parliamentary election, except in some constituencies. Like in Edo State, we have like 1 or 2 constituencies that for some reasons now, INEC could not conduct elections into those constituencies. Like in Ekpoma, Igweben Federal Constituency now, we have that. We understand that there's going to be an election there on Saturday. And of course, this same Saturday, the Edo State House of Assembly election is going to be on. So we employ the INEC this time to ensure that the usage of the beavers, the African Union is holding in strong terms that the use of the beavers should be on. Beavers should be on. We have to use it because that's the only reason why it is being introduced. So we just hope and pray that all those complaints that we had on the 25th of February is not going to happen again come on the 11th of March as we go to the polls one more time. So by then, until then, we'll say thank you so much for watching the program today.
Thank you.
African Discourse. My name is Evan Sunohoge, and thank you so much on the show. Goodbye and God bless you.